now.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear us now? Woohoo!
Yeah.
Ashley says yes. Sorry. Oh, man.
Yes.
Okay. We're going to try to kick things off here again. I'm really sorry that nobody heard my voice for the first 3 slides. So I'm just going to back things up slightly and kick us off here again this morning. Welcome, everyone, to our Community of Learning session for October. Thank you all for joining us this morning, and thank you for your patience as we get a little more acclimated to using Zoom. I think Zoom is going to be fantastic, and we're going to show you some features of Zoom here today and get to try them out during some of our time together. But again, we really, really appreciate your patience. So without further ado, I am going to share a little bit of what we're going to talk about during today's Community of Learning, and then we'll get into some of the logistics of using Zoom and some other parts and pieces, and then really dive into our time together. So today's time is really going to focus on a couple of different things. So as a reminder, our objective for these Community of Learnings is to provide a mechanism for peer-to-peer sharing and learning to really enhance the Michigan Home Visiting Initiative improvement effort. So this is really time for all of you. Oh dear, some people still can't hear. Sorry, I'm looking at the chat. We're going to see if we can get that resolved for you. But this is really a time for all of you to engage with one another and learn from one another, and for us to also answer burning questions that you might have that we can be helpful with. So today we'll kick things off with our welcome roll call and norms for our Community of Learning. We're going to spend some time digging into GroupSite today, which is really exciting. Many of you have had the opportunity to create user accounts at this point in time, and we're going to actually go into GroupSite and show you a little bit about the CQI section, what's there, how you can interact with it and use it, so you can really start using GroupSite in the ways that we definitely intend for that to be a shared space that everybody can engage with. Then we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about using learnings from other teams' PDSA cycles, and GroupSite's going to be particularly helpful with this too, and we'll make some connections to that. We're going to pick up our conversation from the grantee meeting around sustaining gains and scaling up. So if you remember back at the end of September at the grantee meeting, we started talking about this at the end of our time together, and we told you we would pick the conversation back up today. I'm hopeful that all of you put a little bit more thought into those discussion questions and are ready to engage and chat about those today together. And of course, we'll end our time with some final reminders and questions, but you are welcome at any time to utilize the chat and send questions in that you have, or unmute yourself and ask your question verbally or share verbally. Again, we really want this to be very engaging. Okay, so to kick us off with a couple of basic logistical items for using our Zoom space together. The first is that we definitely want to hear from you, and we want you to hear from each other. So don't hesitate to share. All microphones are muted upon entry, but you do have the ability to unmute your microphone yourself, and I'll show you that here in just a few moments. So please feel free to do that. We just ask that you remute if you unmute to minimize the amount of background noise, because we are recording today's session together so that we can share that out with folks who are not able to attend. Again, you're also welcome to engage through the chat box. You can ask questions, share with one another. The one thing you'll want to make sure that you're doing when you use the chat box is that you're sending messages to everyone if it's something that you indeed want everyone to see. That way, everyone can see your message, and we can make sure that those who can respond are able to. It looks like we're still having a couple of people chat into that they're unable to hear, and we are working on that right now. All right, so a couple of logistical pieces about Zoom. So we are gonna dive in and really start using this software that we have for virtual meetings today. And we wanted to share with you a couple of basic features so you know where to find them. So with you all being logged on to Zoom, you should have a bar that is likely at the bottom of your screen. And on that bar, that is where you have a couple of really important features. And the first one that I'm going to talk about is the mute on mute feature. So you'll note that at the left end of that bar, there is a picture of a microphone and it says mute. When that microphone does not have a line through it, you are unmuted. When it has a has a line through it, you're muted. So you can simply mute and unmute that way. If you have called in via the telephone and you're not using the audio features on Zoom, you will need to use the mute unmute features on your telephone, either by using the button that you have for muting and unmuting yourself, or pressing *6 to mute and *6 to unmute. The chat box is the next piece that I want to direct you to. So on that same toolbar that you have, you'll notice on the rightmost side, there is an icon for chatting. If you click on that icon, it will open up an additional window. And within that window, you can chat. You can chat to specific folks if you want to share something just with an individual, or you can chat to everyone. And again, we ask if you are sharing something or asking a question that would really benefit the good of the group, please make sure that you have clicked on everyone and send your chat to all. Now we're going to get into some of the fun stuff. So today we are going to use a couple of Zoom features. We're going to use the annotate feature as well as a polling feature. The first thing to know is that if you did not download the Zoom desktop client, that was the email that went out last week on Friday, then you are not going to be able to use the annotate feature or the polling feature. You do have to have the desktop client downloaded for that. So if you are logged in simply by joining through the internet, you will not have either one of these features on your computer. If you are logged in on the desktop client, which we are strongly encouraging and asking that all of you do that, if you weren't able to for this time around, we ask that you get things in order so that you can next time around, because we really want to use the features that Zoom offers to provide some different ways of engaging with one another over the course of our community of learning time. So today we're going to test out using the annotate feature. And to do that, there are a couple of things that you need to do. So the first is that if you move your mouse over the header option that should be at the top of your screen, there's a little drop-down menu that says View Options. If you click on the little arrow next to View Options, you will get a couple of different features that pop down from that drop-down menu. One of them that you will see is the annotate feature. You want to click on annotate, and that will bring up a new toolbar that you can use. And on that annotate toolbar, there are a couple of different features. The one that you are going to want to use today is the stamp icon. So it literally says stamp, and it has a check mark about it. It's from the left-hand side, it's the 5th one in. And if you click on that, then it will bring up different annotate features that you can use, and you'll want to use the check mark. And we're going to practice using that here in a few moments for roll call. So if you want to just take a few moments and pop up your annotate bar so that you're ready to use that when we get to roll call here in a few moments, you can use the check mark and check yourself in for your team. I'm going to take a pause for a moment and see if there are any questions. All righty. All right, we have now made it to our official welcome, and we have a big team from MPHI supporting these efforts all around. So I am going to invite folks to introduce themselves here in a minute. But again, this is Robin Vandermoor, and I am the Michigan Home Visiting Initiative QI lead. And again, I'm delighted to have you all on the line today and really excited to engage with you over our time together. And I wanted to just take a moment to share this morning and really thank you all for the feedback that you provided at the grant team meeting. We really, really appreciated the feedback that came through on the evaluations, and we made a couple of different tweaks to our time together today in response to that feedback. As you know, we've moved to a new platform for doing our community of learning sessions together. It's going to take some time for all of us to get used to it, but I think that it'll be a really great space for us to use moving forward, and hopefully much more user-friendly than WebEx or Skype, which were our two previous platforms. So we're really, really excited about this move to Zoom. We also shared with you the slide deck ahead of time. There was several requests through the meeting evaluations that the slide deck be sent along ahead of time. So you all got that in your inbox early this week, and hopefully you were able to take a quick peek at it and see what today had in store. Additionally, we had some thoughts and comments around wanting to be sure that there were good opportunities to share successes and really focus on some completed cycles from teams. So you'll note today that there are different opportunities for folks to chime in, for you to share with one another, and we really, really invite you to do that. We are not going to share out your completed cycles in your work because it's your work, and we really want you to do the sharing with one another, whether they are successes or lessons learned that you are going to take and move forward that you feel like are important for other teams to know who might be working in the same areas within their improvement efforts. So please, please, please take the time to do some sharing with one another today. And lastly, folks asked for us to keep it simple, and we've kept it pretty simple today. We have a much more condensed deck of slides than we've had in the past. We've tried to streamline things, and we've tried to also add some different interactive components. So we hope that you will all find that useful, but we invite you to continue to provide feedback so that we can continue to make tweaks to our community of learning time together. So I am going to just ask the MPHI team quickly to let you know that they're here by using the annotate feature. If each of you could put a check mark next to your picture, that would be fantastic. And then we will move to LAA roll call, which will allow you all the opportunity to try out using the annotate feature that I think will be really fantastic for us moving forward. So we have a big group with us today. The only person that wasn't able to join us today, because she is off leading another training today, is Jeanette. But she sends along her well wishes and looks forward to talking with you all soon. All righty, so here you see all of the LAAs listed, plus all of our partners at MDHHS, MDE, and a couple of additional MPHI partners. So if you can take the time to use the annotate feature and put a check mark next to your program's name, that would be fantastic, so we can see who's on the line today. And if for some reason you are not using the desktop version, so you're unable to use Annotate, please feel free to chat in through the chat box that you're here. Seeing lots of green check marks, so that's awesome. It means that the desktop version over on your end is working, which we're so excited about. Just give it a few more moments. Alrighty, if you didn't have a chance to use a check mark in the annotate feature, but still need to let us know you're here, feel free to send that in through the chat box, and we'll see you through there. Alrighty, so before we dive into our content, I just wanted to share a couple of our community of learning norms and agreements. And these should look really familiar to all of you because we have had these in place for a little bit of time, but we really want to create a shared safe space for learning from and with one another. And we ask that you all respect different perspectives and approaches, be present, engage with one another, ask questions to seek a deeper understanding, and really have fun during our time together. We don't get the opportunity to get together in this way very often, so it's really exciting when we do have the opportunity to gather virtually and spend a little time with one another. So without further ado, I am going to pass things off to Brittany, and Brittany is going to dive into GroupSite and tell you a little more about that.
Thank you, Robin. Let's see if I can smoothly transition to our GroupSite. All right, if you created a username and password already, this page should look somewhat familiar to you. This is our GroupSite landing page or home page that when you visit the site, this is the first thing you'll see. If you don't have a username or password quite yet, you'll still see this page. However, there'll be a link in the upper right corner that you'll need to click to create your username and password. So to do that, you would just click the link and a window would appear where you can create a user ID, which is your email address. And then you'll create your password on that page, and then you'll click a button to join. And when you do that, we'll receive an email on our end and approve you to join this GroupSite. And then you'll receive a message in your inbox to set up your profile. So that's where you can include a picture and update your account information. So once you have a user name and password, you'll be able to visit our continuous quality improvement page. And this page here was created in the idea that you'll have a space that you can visit to look up resources, you can view updates, announcements, but also to collaborate and work with other sites that are doing similar work. So on our CQI page, you would visit underneath the resource dropdown. There's a continuous quality improvement link that you would click to visit this page. And once you're on the page, you'll see a brief introduction. There'll be sections where you can submit your learning collaborative work. And we also have a list of previous collaborative work. And we'll go through how to add work. It's pretty simple in just a bit here, but there's also QI tool templates. So instead of your QI advisor sending you these tools through email, you can visit this site. You'll simply click the link here and you can open them and download them on your desktop. We also have links of these recordings on here as well, and then grantee meeting materials too. And then there's also an area for discussion. So if you want to bring up topics or any questions with other sites, this is where you would do that. So to upload features, and this page will be ever-changing as we create new sections for you all to submit your work as well. But the idea is that you'll be able to click the link and then you'll be able to upload your work from here. Right now, you do not have the capability to do this, but this is something that will be rolled out. Okay. So when you click the link into what the GroupSite calls a file cabinet, that's where all our documents and resources will be saved. So if you click the link on our CQI page, you should be in the correct folder, but you can always verify on this menu on the left here. To upload your work, you'll just simply click the upload option, and it'll bring up your Explorer window where you can find the document that you want to update, and then you would click open. I have to remember to delete this afterwards. And then when you click OK, your document or resource will be listed there for everyone to see. So I'm going to go back to our CQI page.
It's really important to note that to be able to upload documents, you have to have a user account. So if you haven't been able to take a few moments and request a user account, we invite you to do so after our time together today, so we can make sure that everybody has a user account so they have ability to really use the site to the fullest.
And another great way to use this site to collaborate with other members is that discussion feature. So at the bottom of this page, you can, I just created a discussion for viewing purposes. So you can click one that's already created, and you can reply to this discussion that's already started. Or if you have a new topic that you want to bring up or talk about, you would have to visit the CQI discussion page and create a new topic that way. There's also, so all of our links are in the CQI page, but you can visit these links by the Communicate tab, by clicking Discussions, or sharing your documents. You can also visit the File cabinet underneath Share. But mostly everything's going to be under the CQI page for you to use. Is there anything else that we wanted to show on the CQI page?
Maybe we can take a few moments and just show them the calendar. Note that the calendar is up to date basically through this month, but we are working on adding all of the items for fiscal year 20 since we just dived in to a new fiscal year. So you'll see updates appear on that calendar as we move forward. And it's important to note that the calendar is not only reflective of CQI items or improvement items in that way. It's really going to be inclusive of all things for the initiative. So it'll be a good go-to spot for you to visit if you're curious about what's coming up for the month or what's coming up in the months ahead.
Yeah, so like Robin mentioned, it's not CQI specific. So any page you are on the group site, it should be visible either on this right side here or on that home landing page. And there's a cool feature that if you click the calendar invite that you would like to attend, you can export it to your Outlook or your iCalendar, so then it's right there on your work calendar.
So as we really get going with Group Site, you will get more communications from us. Depending on what you set up in your user profile for Group Site, you will also get messages from Group Site saying, you know, Robin Vandermoor posted a new discussion to Group Site, or Brittany Spitzley uploaded such and such document, those types of things to get little news alerts, and that's something that you can change. So really, once you get your user account set up, we invite you to go in and set up your profile, add a picture if you'd like, add some details about what program you're with, what you do, and indicate your preferences so that you can get automated messages from Group Site as often or as little as you would like. We will be using Group Site too to do some more communication in the way of emails. You are used to getting emails from our Outlook email addresses, but Group Site has the neat functionality of sending emails to users in that way. So as we post new materials, we are going to get in the practice of really making sure that that information is getting out through GroupSite too, because we know that some of you who have GroupSite user accounts don't get our emails directly. You get them forwarded from whoever the lead is at your site, and we want to make sure that we're getting the message out to as many people as possible, so we will also share those things through GroupSite. So lots to come. We're really excited, just getting started, and we also look forward to your feedback with GroupSite, things you'd like to see, hopes and dreams. We can try to make stuff happen as best possible. We are learning as we go as well. So, you know, thank you in advance for your patience, but we're really excited to dig in and use this shared space together this year, and hope that you will find it very helpful and beneficial as well.
All right, is there any questions on GroupSite or anything you would like to see again?
You can feel free to share through the chat or unmute your line. All right, well, if anything comes to mind, feel free to ask. And without further ado, we are going to pass things off to Angela, who is going to lead us into our next piece.
Thank you. So as you all heard from both Brittany and Robin, GroupSite is really going to be an important place for all of us across the initiative to be able to collaborate. And that goes across many parts of the initiative. And as Brittany pointed out and gave you a tour of, one of the places that can happen is within our improvement efforts. So GroupSite is going to be a terrific place to refer to what the work of others, and to be able to really use some of that momentum from what others are doing and build your own PDSA cycle. So we're going to go ahead and dive into some improvement-specific content now. And the bridge is really here using other people's work and their own momentum to really kind of harness your own momentum and move forward with your own PDSA cycle. So we're going to talk just a little bit about how to use your colleagues' work as a starting point for quick PDSA cycles. So as you all know, when it comes to quality improvement, teams really need to be testing out something that's tailored and very specific to their own issues that a team is dealing with. So we need tailored, appropriate solutions to the unique issues faced by your local implementing agency. We know that normally happens in the plan stage, when you're thinking really deeply about the problem that exists, about the root causes of those problems, and as you start to make your way through the potential solutions, you're building something that's really, really unique to the issues and the nuances of your particular local implementing agency. There's a perk, though, in being a part of such a large collaborative network, which is really that we have an awesome opportunity to be able to learn from one another, and you're really able to see what your colleagues are testing out, learn about their innovative solutions to some common problems that you may be able to relate to, and from there you can kickstart or jumpstart your own PDSA cycles. And I think this to a certain extent is a little bit of a broken record, because we hear this same sort of excitement for being able to connect with each other and hear what others are doing in terms of their improvement efforts every single time we have a grantee meeting where we get to do storyboard sharing. On your evaluations, we hear loud and clear that you appreciate that chance to hear from one another, to learn from what others are doing, and to be able to use what your colleagues are testing out in the field as some inspiration and maybe even some innovation to your own processes. Next slide, please. So when we're just thinking here in some basic steps, the first step is to really learn from your colleagues' QI work. And this we know you're already doing. So we mentioned our grantee meetings tend to be a really great place to learn what others are testing out, what problems others are attending to, and how they are handling some issues that maybe you can relate to and want to learn from. So we know that grantee meetings are a really important proving ground for those conversations. We also have designed these Michigan Home Visiting Initiative Community of Learning gatherings, these sessions, as a chance for you all to hear from one another. So throughout the years, we've had spotlights on projects. We've asked certain programs or PDSA cycles to kind of come to the spotlight and tell us about what's going on. We've created some open mic time for you to ask each other questions. We truly want to encourage both your in-person and those virtual spaces for you to be able to connect with one another, because as we all know, we're super duper busy, and we also know that there's an opportunity to save some time and redundancies if you're able to learn from what one another are doing. We encourage you, as you're connecting with other people, to really also think about learning about project details. So Brittany just showed you some great places on GroupSite where you can look at, you can nose around, find information on previous PDSA cycles, previous learning collaborative sessions. This is going to be a very rich resource for you all, especially when you're starting to think about that next PDSA cycle. If you need innovation, if you need inspiration, a visit to GroupSite, I think, will really, really help when it comes to that. Also, if you've been through one of our learning collaborative seasons, I'll call it here, when we are actively doing learning collaborative work, we send out monthly updates that tell you everything that's going on across all of our collaboratives. And this is a tremendous place to be able to see in a very easy way what the big picture is of each PDSA cycle that we know is going on. So know that you have these really rich resources available to you for inspiration to know what others in the field in Michigan are doing in terms of quality improvement. So once you've connected with your colleagues, you've learned about the projects that they've done, you've asked them questions like, what did you learn from this? What were your ahas? What happened? We then ask you to consider some of those experiences through your local implementing agency's lens. While it will be very, very tempting to pick up someone's PDSA cycle and apply it A to Z, we strongly encourage you not to skip some of the steps that we know as they are embedded in the plan stage. We know they're really critical to making sure that you're attacking the right problem that is indeed a problem with the unique nuances and solutions that your team is going to need. So say you've heard about a project or a PDSA cycle that you're really interested in. We encourage you to ask yourself a couple of questions once you're thinking, oh, this might be something that we want to work on as well. First, think about, is your team experiencing this problem the same way? Is the way that the other team or this PDSA cycle in front of you is presenting your problem, is it similar to your problem? Is it the same problem? What do your data look like when it comes to that particular problem? You never want to skip that step because, again, PDSA and quality improvement in general is all about efficiency, reducing redundancies and making sure that there are tailored, personalized approaches to the problems at hand. So make sure that you still are taking some time to think about your baseline, and you're making sure that the problem that someone else experienced is close enough to run a similar PDSA cycle. Next, think about your team's root causes of the problem at hand. What one team might experience as the root causes of their problem, it's very likely that there might be some unique root causes within your community, within your team. So never skip the opportunity for that root cause analysis. You certainly, I'll say, we love efficiencies here, and if you find a PDSA that you love that has maybe even a fishbone diagram that you can start out with, that would be a great place to kickstart a brainstorm and say, hey, this is what one team came up with. What would we add to this? What doesn't apply to our team? You can always find shortcuts and ways to beg, borrow, and steal from each other, but we always encourage that second step of what this look like? What does this look like for our team? And how would we change things? Lastly, we want to make sure that you are picking a tailored solution that really hits on the root cause, just really at the forefront of your team's barriers when it comes to the opportunity for improvement in front of you. Again, you might talk to another team about their solutions, and you might include their solutions, maybe even their full affinity diagram if they've shared that. You might include that as a part of your team's brainstorm, but don't skip the step of thinking through the solutions tailored to your team's root cause analysis. This is a really great way just to do a double check that what you're working on is truly tailored to your team, to your community, and the problems or opportunities in front of you. Go to the next slide, Brittany. Thank you. So in short, just want to give a couple of high-level pieces of advice. We strongly encourage to find shortcuts in your work when it comes to your improvement efforts by use other PDSA cycles and lessons learned from colleagues. You heard me say a couple of times, don't skip this step, don't skip this step. That doesn't mean we don't like efficiencies. We strongly encourage, find that inspiration, find those ideas for innovation with common problems across your colleagues. We think it's a great way to be able to build upon the momentum that you all are that you're all working towards. But here's that second piece. Don't skip the step of checking in on your own data, your own processes, and your own team's ideas when it comes to building off other PDSA cycles. So remember that word, inspiration. Use other projects as inspiration, but make sure you individualize the path forward based on your team's understanding of the problem at hand, your QI team's experiences that might be very different from another team's, and how you might like to move forward with that. So make sure that you're tailoring and personalizing those inspirational PDSA cycles that you've learned about from others. And lastly, we do believe that being able to piggyback on momentum from other PDSA cycles is super helpful and can be really efficient for your time and energy. That doesn't mean that we recommend skipping any of the 4 stages or any of the 9 steps of PDSA. So we still encourage you, go through Plan, Do, Study, Act, go through all 9 of the very important steps. We just know that with inspiration from other projects, you might be able to move a little bit more nimbly and a little quicker through those steps. So think about how you can sort of combine those 4 stages and the 9 steps with the inspiration of others to create those kind of quick, nimble PDSA cycles that your team can be able to start and complete in a timely manner.
So I want to take a pause here for a second and check in with all of you. One of the things that you provided really excellent feedback on through your grant team meeting evaluations was that you want to hear about more successes that teams have had and completed PDSA cycles and or just improvement efforts, folks that are working within the quality planning realm so that you can learn with one another. So I'd like to pause for a bit. We have some time and invite some of you to unmute your lines and share a recently completed improvement effort that you have worked on and or share some of that through the chat. So we are going to go on mute on our end for a few moments and invite you all to do some sharing with one another.
Can you hear me? This is Michelle from Oakland. Hello?
This one muted right now.
Now we're...
Michelle, we can hear you. You can go ahead.
I'm glad we didn't say anything about you guys. No, I'm kidding. I wanted to share that. we were having an issue trying to figure it out. But I wanted to share that one of the things we did for our PDSA cycle, we were trying to increase the pediatricians in our area knowing about what NFP does and introducing ourselves, introducing the program, so that they could hear about what we do and how we are eyes in the community for them. And they, if there's anything they ever needed us to look into, to be able to contact us. And then our other goal with this was to increase well baby exams. And so one of the things we did is for every child that's born, we drafted a letter that we send to pediatricians to let them know that who the nurse is and that we're visiting their child, and just, it kind of also touches on some key things that NFP does in the community. And I know that when we met, what was it, last month or a couple weeks ago, I'm confused. I know there were a couple people that were really interested in the letter that we had drafted to go to the pediatrician, and I did send it to them, and they seem to feel that that's going to be helpful for their groups as well. So I just wanted to put that out there. We have been doing it with the OBs, but now we're doing it with the pediatricians, and we're excited about it.
Thank you so much, Michelle. That is super, super exciting. And I want to open it up and invite anyone to ask questions of Michelle and team, and or do some sharing, because a number of you are working in the area of access to care this year and working on improvement efforts related to well child visits, prenatal care, postpartum visits, so on and so forth. And we would love to hear from some of the others that have been engaged in work in this area that have had some like successes or different successes, because this is an important part of the work that you're doing. For many of you, you have standards or measures within your model or within funding that you receive that pertain to access to care. And so we know how important it is for all of you to think about these components and put some efforts towards them. So questions for Michelle and or other successes achieved in this realm?
Hello, this is Kara. Can you hear me?
You sure can, Kara.
Okay, so I'm up in the EUP, and we were one of the few programs that actually chose that quality planning piece. And so I feel like it looked a little bit different than what, like in the past when we had done the CQI, like the PDSA cycle, but we really worked those pieces in as we went. It's just, so when we in the past have done the PDSA cycle, we have really picked a very specific item to try that would increase increase our program outcomes. Whereas with this planning, we really chose some goals and some strategies based on our APR, which is our annual performance review, that we wanted to increase. And it wasn't so specific and narrow, it was more programmatic. But I do feel like doing these cycles and touching base with you guys and recording the work in a way that we would record a PDSA cycle really was the thing that helped us keep on track and keep moving. So while it might not have looked the exact same or the same cycle, it still had a lot of those same pieces.
Thanks so much, Kara, for sharing that. You all had great successes in the work that you were doing this year, and I think that especially there are a number of PAT programs on the line that can learn lots from the efforts that you engaged in. So really appreciate you sharing.
Thanks.
Any questions for Kara and team?
Can I just add that if there are programs who their APR wasn't exactly where they thought it might have been, and that's their annual performance report, and I'm really kind of speaking to the PAT programs, that quality planning cohort is super useful, and it doesn't mean that you have to be a brand new program to do that, because we had been users of the curriculum, but it really just helps you get grounded in those foundational pieces to move forward, and it really just strengthens your program. So if you had some data that you weren't exactly, or didn't think it was exactly where you had hoped it should be, that's just one cohort to maybe consider.
Thank you, Kara. It looks like we had another sharing come in through the chat that I want to share out loud and then ask if the team might want to share a little bit more. But it sounds like there was a team that focused one of their PDSA cycles on a breastfeeding group for their clients. And they shared that they had to narrow criteria so that their group had only 2 people, and that it didn't go so well. But this fiscal year, they really plan to try it again and expand their criteria to include anyone interested in breastfeeding to maybe reach some more folks. So I'm wondering if that team might be able to share a little bit more about some of the successes and challenges that you ran into with this particular Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle, because we have had a number of teams focus in the area of breastfeeding in the past several years, and this year too. We had a couple of teams that were particularly focused on some home visiting COIN 90-day testing efforts that I would invite to also chime in and share some of your learnings and experiences. So Tanya, I don't know if you are available on the phone or if anybody from your team is, but if you could share a little bit more about the information you shared in the chat, that would be fantastic. You can feel free to unmute yourself.
Robin, can you hear me now?
Sure can.
Okay. This is Leanne with Saginaw NFP. We had to unmute in 3 different places.
Oh dear, no worries.
With our breastfeeding group, we had a criteria of moms who were interested, and they had to be within 20 to 30 weeks gestation. So within that, there was only 2 clients who were interested in breastfeeding and going to deliver at the right time frame. They both showed up routinely. They enjoyed the group, got a lot out of it, but then the first one delivered. So she wasn't coming for a period of time, and then just as she was getting back on track, the other person delivered. So it kind of fizzled out. So we're hoping if we expand to anyone interested in breastfeeding and reach out to WIC, we might have more regular attenders, and that won't happen.
Cool. Thank you so much for sharing that, Leanne. That makes a lot of good sense. And I also had the wondering and thought kind of pop into my head of links with this, with really access to care in that maybe thinking about and considering when OB offices might be talking with moms about breastfeeding and what kind of connections you might be able to make there too, to get this group to be a little bit larger and see if it really is a good support mechanism for moms. And I would think that it would be, speaking from personal experiences. So thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome.
I wonder if, I don't know if anybody from Calhoun NFP or Hurley NFP is on the line, but if you are and there's anything you might want to add to this discussion around breastfeeding, I know you all had some focused efforts on breastfeeding this past fiscal year and some really great learnings that you were able to accomplish through that 90-day testing that you did with the home visiting coin. So I'd invite you to share anything that you might like to add to this conversation. Okay, well, so we heard a little bit about some improvement efforts focused on access to care. We heard some about improvement efforts focused with breastfeeding, and we heard about some really true quality planning efforts focused on working toward meeting specifically some criteria for the Parents as Teachers model. I'm wondering if there are other successes that you all have achieved as of late that you'd like to share with the good of the group. I know there were a ton of topic areas that were worked on for improvement in the last fiscal year, and that there are lots and lots of good things to share that might pique folks' interest as we are heading into this new fiscal year, and all of you are thinking about where you might want to take your improvement efforts next. Maureen, it looks like you can share a little bit about where you might like to go next. Please feel free to do so.
You hear me?
Sure can.
Okay, perfect. So I'll share a little bit about what we just finished up. Really, it turned out to be a data entry error. We were part of Parents as Teachers as well, and we did initial child health reviews. And back in April, when I ran our report, said that 22% of them were completed, and we really felt like that was incorrect. But then we felt like that was a good something to focus on, because obviously we needed to improve that and figure out what our error was. So we found out in Visit Tracker that there was a whole different area that we were supposed to be recording our health reviews. So once we started moving all of our data into the correct spot, we quickly went from 22% to 100%. So that was a quick, easy, wonderful fix. And then what we want to focus on next is really partnering with early on. There were about 175 kids that did not qualify for early on or special education. And we would love for those kids to come back to PAT as a referral. Our numbers are low right now. We feel like we could be a great service to those families. So we're trying to figure out the wording with Jeanette right now and figure out if that's something we can tackle, just so we can meet the needs of those families, and in turn it also helps us with our numbers. So that's what we're thinking about next.
Thank you, Maureen. That's really cool. And I would definitely recommend that your team hops on to a group site and takes a look at, there was a quality improvement learning collaborative that was run a fiscal year or two back that was really focused on some making connections with early on, making sure that children who needed early on services were getting them and or, you know, had that coverage with home visiting. So I think there's a lot that you can learn from what teams have tested previously and or things that might just pique your team's interest as you look at the materials that were put together for that learning collaborative. So I would encourage you all to hop on and take a peek at those materials.
Awesome, we will. Thank you.
Absolutely, and I know that there are some other PhD programs too that have focused on in the past or might be looking to focus on those health reviews, and I'd invite you to reach out to Maureen and team and learn from their efforts in this area and how they were able to really improve that particular PhD measure for their program. All right, so I'm going to move us forward into our next piece together, and there's going to be some opportunities to engage. So I will invite you all to sit back for a few moments, but then to really be prepared to engage with a couple of discussion questions that we have during this next little portion of our time together. So we're going to pick up our conversation that we started at the grantee meeting at the end of September, that we really were chatting more about what happens beyond the ACT stage. You have had successful improvement efforts and you're trying to think about where to go next, what now? How do you make sure that those successes that you've achieved are really kept in place and maintained for the long haul? So at the grantee meeting, Angela shared some important terms with you all to consider. And I'm going to reshare those today because I think that those are they're really important to keep in mind as you are looking and thinking beyond, okay, we've made these improvements, we've achieved these successes, and we want to make sure that they stay in place and that we don't maybe go back to our old way of doing things. So a couple of things to keep in mind as you are really thinking beyond the ACT stage. And the first is testing. When you are trying out changes on a small scale, you are testing. You're not implementing, you're testing. Because remember, it's an experiment. The change is temporary. It's not permanent. Testing really gives you the freedom to kind of foolproof your change and find what really, really works so that you can indeed keep that in place. There are usually only a person or a few people that are testing. It is not something that is happening with your entire program, and there's lots of learning that's happening and lots of learning that you want to be sure you're capturing so you understand what really works, where you need to make tweaks so that you can keep those improvements that you achieve sustained for the long haul. Implementing really gets into, okay, we have found something that works. We've tested it under different conditions. So different home visitors have tested it, different families have had the experience and had successful outcomes, so on and so forth. And you are ready to implement that particular change as a part of your day-to-day practice. So at this point, that change is no longer temporary. It's not something that you're trying out anymore. All staff are really going to be impacted by it. So you are going to be working to get everybody on board, and you are in a place where you really expect success. You are confident that that particular change is going to work. You are going to work to integrate it as part of your formal process. So that process map that you put in place at the beginning of your testing, where you really thought through what is it that we are currently doing, you're going to go back and you're going to revise that because this change was successful and it's something that you are going to make a part of your formal standard process that all staff are going to use. The piece that comes along with implementation is really sustaining. So making sure that you're not only implementing that change, so putting that change in place as a permanent part of practice, but you are looking to how you are sustaining that change. So you are monitoring that change and making sure that the gains you achieved through your improvement efforts are something that you keep in place for the long haul. So you are watching that data point or data points that you were looking closely to during your improvement efforts and making sure that they continue to sort of maintain where you're at if you achieved really great improvement and you're comfortable with where you are, or that you continue to achieve gains over time. So a little bit more on the difference between testing and implementation. You heard me say with testing that it's not permanent. You are really focused on learning, and there are minimal risks because this is an experiment. You're just trying it out. You are expecting some failure, and that is okay because we oftentimes learn the most from things that don't work so that we can figure out what really will work. There are minimal people affected, and you are trying things out in a short period of time. You are not trying something out over a 12-month period. We're talking about maybe a week. You're trying something different, learning from it, taking those learnings forward. And really, resistance is lower because fewer people are affected. You are leaning on those folks that are excited about trying something different and excited about learning from the process as a whole. Once you've tested a change and you found something that really, really works, so you have tweaked it, you've tested it under different conditions, so on and so forth, and you're ready to implement, remember, again, implementation, it really becomes part of your routine. It is an integrated piece of your standard process that all staff are using. You are experiencing less learnings because your performance should be really close to what your predictions are for the long haul, and you are really expecting success. You are not expecting that your data point or data points that you're looking to are, going in the direction of making you think that you aren't successful. You are expecting that success because you have tested that change really thoroughly as a program. More people are impacted because remember, when you make it a standard part of practice, it's part of your process. Everybody's using that process moving forward. And really, honestly, implementation takes more time. So be patient. Know that, it's not going to happen overnight, that you are going to have to think through things like training, how to make sure staff are aware of different forms or parts and pieces that are associated with the process that they need to use moving forward. And there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve. So you want to still be patient, but you want to really work toward making sure the mechanisms are in place for full implementation so that you can really sustain that particular change for the long haul. Alrighty, so you all saw this question at the grantee meeting, but we didn't have time to talk about it. And we told you that when we came together today that we would spend some time chatting about this and really having the opportunity for you all to share one another. So again, we would like you to consider successful improvement efforts that your LAA completed in FY19. Those can be quality planning, quality improvement, so on and so forth. And we want you to share a little bit about how you have implemented and sustained improvement efforts that resulted in successful changes within your program. What are some of the things that you are doing to make sure that those successful changes stay in place for the long term? So I am going to pause and be quiet and invite you to unmute your line and share verbally and or share through the chat. While everybody's thinking and doing a little sharing, there's a good question that came in through the chat box. So Teresa's wondering that if in the do stage, if there's the ability to modify your if-then, so your improvement theory, when realizing that your plan is not realistic or might not be working. Yes. However, what I would really encourage is that whatever change your team commits to testing during the do stage, that you test it. If you find out that it's really not, it's not working, you want to wrap up that cycle, so you want to study and act on that. You want to document your learnings, and then you want to move forward into a new PDSA cycle rather quickly, using what you put together for a plan for your initial cycle, making modifications as needed, and testing the change, either tweaked or a different change if maybe you found that you addressed the wrong root cause, or the change that you selected from your brainstorm of potential solutions maybe just wasn't on track and you need to select a different one from that affinity diagram or whatever tool it is that you used for brainstorming potential solutions, and move forward into a new cycle. You want to be sure that you're keeping your PDSA cycles short, you're assessing those learnings and moving them forward. So the best thing to do in that situation would be to study and act on that cycle, close it out, move into a new cycle that's focused within the same area, take those learnings forward, and try something a little different out. Thanks for the great question, Teresa. All right, so what are some techniques that you have used to implement and sustain successful improvement efforts? We're really comfortable with silence and quietness, so we're going to wait.
Can you guys hear me? Can you
yes,
guys
we sure can. Is that Takia?
Yes, this is Takia. I just want to comment on our most recent quality improvement with increasing awareness with the local foster care agencies. We had received one, what sparked our interest is that we received one request for our parenting classes from one local foster care agency, and they never knew that we existed, and they learned about our program through the judge had referred them, and that sparked our interest. Like, we didn't know they existed, and so what we did was we connected with them. We shared about our program and services and parenting classes that can help the families that they serve and get them connected and their larger group to increase families from their agency into our program, because that was an area that we really didn't tap into. And so that QI helped us to increase, and we have been getting a nice flow of families from foster care services and able to work with them with our parenting classes. And so that was a big aha moment for us, that we needed to tap into more local foster care agencies besides that one. So we started with that one, and now we're connecting with others. And what we're doing to sustain is that we're continuously tracking the amount of families that we serve through the foster care agencies, and also staying in the loop with the group as a whole, as far as when they have their full staff meetings. We're looking to do it monthly, just to kind of touch bases to see what's going well, what we can do to enhance our relationship and strengthen it if there's anything that comes up. So that's how we're looking to sustain it, our relationship with the foster care agencies, and also look to partner with others.
That's super. Thank you so much for sharing, Takia. So it sounds like a couple of different things really happened. You got this reach out that really offered opportunity to explore a relationship with a new group within your community, develop that relationship, as well as meet needs of families within your community, and have found some good ways of putting mechanisms in place for keeping that relationship going, being that you are maintaining continuous communication with one another. You are joining each other's meetings once per month so that you can make sure that that connection stays strong, that you can continue to meet the needs of families that are accessing services sort of on both ends, which is fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yes, and another thing that I learned from speaking with them is that they aren't aware of a lot of different programs. Like they're looking for programs for fathers, and so helping them even connect further beyond our services. And so that was very helpful, and also learning they wanted to understand how they could help their caseworkers and managers learn a little bit about developmental milestones and things like that. So we were able to connect them with other additional services.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. So much learning just within one improvement effort. Thank you so much for sharing. It looks like we had a couple of good things come in through the chat that I want to share and make sure everybody's aware of. So Becky shared that their parent educators have added project tasks to their task list so that they remember to keep implementing. So a technique for making sure that something that was tested is something that's really maintained and in place. And so part of the process change there for this particular team was making sure that parent educators have that important piece on their task list so they don't forget to do it, and that it's something that is maintained for the long haul. Thank you so much for sharing that, Becky. Julie wrote in and shared that the team that she is working with improved library card access from 19 to 67%, and have now included that process as really part of their standard enrollment paperwork so that nobody's missed, so that you're making sure you're able to connect those families with that important resource within your community. And a great way of doing that is making it part of your standard process. So it is part of your enrollment process now, which is fantastic. Thanks so much for sharing that, Julie and team. Maureen shared that they've sustained their efforts for child health reviews by continuing to enter data in the right place. So really having that learning that data wasn't making it into the right spot. So making sure everybody within the program is trained on where to put that data in so that it is captured and the data are accurate on an ongoing basis. Julie also shared that they have included a new parent representative on their CQI team. Ooh, fantastic. And are including her in all communications. She's attending the Parents Partnering for Change training and will be attending the CQI training in November. That is fantastic. So you are able to get a parent, somebody who is receiving services on your team so that they can provide that perspective. Thanks so much for sharing that. And then it looks like Chandrika from Genesee PAT shared that they were able to develop a process that allows them to really better track and report referrals that were made. So they now enter all referrals into a Synergy data system that they're using, so the supervisor can use the program for reporting accurate data. That's fantastic. So making entering referrals as a standard part of your process when it comes to data entry so that you can have a good understanding of referrals that are being made through your program. Thank you so much for sharing that. Michelle from Ingham PAT shared that they tried to unmute and talk, but were able to successfully do those, but that their team worked through two cycles that were really based on outcome requirements. And let's see here, that you knew you would have to implement as part of your model. So something that you needed to make sure that you had in place for PAT. So one cycle was really focused on the Bring Its Child assessment. You tested it, and now you're really using it frequently and have implemented it within your program. So you're making sure that you have an important child assessment integrated within your program to meet model expectations. And that you are revisiting at staff meetings and really making that like something ongoing that you're talking about and making changes as needed. And that you did somewhat of the same thing with the Piccolo, which is a parent observation assessment that can be used, some that many programs are using. and are really using the tool in some important ways. So focusing on how the information from the Piccolo helps support parent educators in deciding what to focus on in-home visits from your curriculum. So being able to make choices that align with family needs. That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Michelle and team. And then it looks like Healthy Families Upper Peninsula shared that they are partnering with the UP Collaborative, their LLG and Healthy Families UP, to work to recruit parents, and that has been a successful collaboration. And they have 3 parents that are joining up with their teams and planning to attend the training that's taking place in November. Thanks so much for sharing that, Carrie. So some important things to keep in mind as you are implementing changes, really, again, making sure that they are a formal part of your process and that staff are aware of those successful changes and how to go about really implementing them, that you're putting mechanisms in place so you have those important check-ins so you can really make sure that those improvements are sustained for the long haul. So on the flip side of that is always this piece around challenges, that there are going to be challenges that you encounter when implementing and sustaining successful changes. And we're wondering if some of you can speak to some of those challenges and how you've worked to overcome them within your program with successful changes that you really wanted to implement, but maybe some of your initial tries at implementing them and sustaining them didn't work out as you had planned. Teresa shared that the team that she is working with, the PAT team that she works with, they had a really early PDSA cycle that was focused on a change that was particularly successful, and they were able to sustain it for a while. It was a literacy survey that they've been using, but unfortunately, they haven't been able to sustain that for the long haul in terms of making it a part of ongoing practice, and at this time it's become something that's a little bit more optional due to some other factors that have taken place within their program. So, you know, it was successful initially, and then they've encountered some challenges that have made it so that's not maybe part of practice among all parent educators within the program, and starting to really think through what that means when you have a successful change that you've put in place, and now it's something that that you might not be able to maintain for the long haul, and what that really means. Thanks for sharing that, Teresa. Really appreciate it. Other challenges you've encountered with implementing and sustaining successful changes?
Can you hear us?
We sure can.
Oh, great. Okay. So for ours, we did 2 rounds of testing. For Genesee, we did 2 rounds of testing in the area of our LIA projects. In the first test, we tried using Synergy, but found that the way it was set up did not meet our needs. It was difficult to enter the data, and we felt it was important to record, and it was also difficult to extract the data for the reporting. So this was all with our referrals, and the number of referrals recorded increased slightly, but not a lot. So we revised it and then started using the Synergy program to better capture the information after working with the data team. and it increased from 2.6 per month to 8.33 on average for our MHVI team. And we're going to be sharing the results with the rest of our home visiting staff and trying to push it through so all the home visiting staff is using it, which we just started recently.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Genesee, PAT. Really important learnings and showing how you can use multiple PDSA cycles to work toward achieving improvement in one area. And that, you know, the first time you try something out, it might not be right. And you may discover some really important learnings that you can then take forward into your next PDSA cycle, you know, either testing a completely different change or tweaking that change. And in this case, you tweaked it, tested it under some different circumstances and found some success. So you feel comfortable implementing that change and trying to maintain it for the long haul. But really sharing that, you know, there were some challenges that you encountered along the way in that journey, and you worked to overcome them as a team, knowing that, you know, being able to have this referral information was really, really important to your program, and wanting to have that in a place where you can successfully use it and access it on an ongoing basis. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Becky shared in the chat that their team has really found that almost all of their PDSA cycles have been successful, which is fantastic. But she shared that, you know, they really wanted to continue, but keeping some of these changes that they tested in place has been challenging with needing to meet ongoing, in this case, PAT requirements, but model requirements. And thanks for sharing that, Becky. I think that's a really important piece to kind of bring forward here, and to really shed a little bit of light on how when you're working through doing some improvement efforts, you want to make sure that your testing changes, that if you do find that they're successful, they are simple tweaks to your process that you can really integrate and keep in place. And they're leading to some greater efficiencies within the work that you're doing. And it's not something that could be challenging to keep in place for the long haul. So that's something to really consider when you are testing changes, because when you do find good success, you want to be able to implement if you've tested it under different conditions, and it seems to be something that works really well for your program. If it's you know, hard to implement and keep in place for the long haul, then that can really be a challenge. So that's a layer that your team wants to consider and think about. And this goes for all of you as you're thinking about testing changes, and whether or not, if that change you're testing is successful, how you might be able to really implement it as part of your standard processes within your program, and keep that in place. Can be a tricky component of doing this wonderful work. All right, so if there are other things that you all would like to share, I would invite you to definitely do so through the chat. I'm going to move us into just a couple of last thoughts before we head into our kind of final piece of our time together here this morning. So just to keep in mind when sustaining gains, that when you're implementing, implementation of those successful changes takes time. It's not something that is going to happen overnight. And as I said, you want to be patient. You want to make sure that you are keeping good communication channels open with one another, and that you're checking in, and that as you identify challenges with implementation, you are thinking through how to really best address those challenges as a team, so that you can implement successful changes for the long run in your program, and make them part of how you operate on a day-to-day basis. Also important to keep in mind that improvement efforts are really only helpful in the long run if gains are sustained. So if you are working through improvement efforts and you are finding success, you want to make sure that, again, that is something that you can keep in place for the long haul. So you want to think about concrete and specific ways that you will make sure that the great work that you're doing is something that you can keep doing. So I leave you with those couple of thoughts as you consider embarking on improvement efforts in this new fiscal year of FY20, and thinking about how you're going to continue to carry forward those important improvement efforts that you worked on last fiscal year or in previous fiscal years that you did find some really, really great gains from that you want to make sure you keep in place as a part of your program. And would, of course, invite you always, as you are thinking about beyond the ACT stage, to reach out to your MHVI CQI advisor or coach for help to really think through that and how you can make those things lasting improvements within your program. We are here to help and support you. We want to help and support you, so please, please let us know what we can do in that light. I am going to pass things over to Brenda now, who is going to take us through some important reminders, and we're going to have some time for final questions.
Thanks, Robin. So we are moving in, well, we have moved past the end of FY19. So we at MPHI are doing our last steps to wrap up and submit everything to MDE and MDHHS for FY19 wrap-up. So the first thing you'll see here under the requirements is that FY19 effort wrap-up. And most of you, many of you, have already submitted final storyboards and team charters. If you have not already for your Learning Collaborative or your LIA specific, you want to make sure that MPHI has both your Cycle 1 and your Cycle 2 final team charters and final storyboards, because those will be packaged up and sent off to MDE and MDHHS at the end of this month. And so make sure if you had any final edits you were wrapping up that you send those to us. We are also embarking on our FY20 kickoff. So MDE 32P sub 4 teams, we know that you're working with Rita at MDE to finalize your menu decisions and create your letters of agreement with MPHI to move forth in your efforts for FY20. The MDHHS teams who are in the COIN, since the COIN continues and doesn't run quite on the same schedule as we do with fiscal years, you'll just continue as you have been until the end of the COIN. So moving into FY20, the LIA-specific improvement efforts, and this will be all MDHHS teams who are not in the COIN and 32P sub 4 teams who have chosen the LIA option from their menu of services with Rita. In FY20, just as previous years, you'll complete at least 2 PDSA cycles. Fall is a great time to start your PDSA cycle 1 to keep your efforts moving and to not kind of put off so that you've got a lot of requirements stacking up. It's good to just keep going, keep your momentum right now. Maintain, complete, and share all of your required documentation for each cycle, and that's always the team charter and storyboard. Connect with your MPHI CQI advisor and coach. And something that will be new for this year is uploading your QI documents to GroupSite. We will still have the quarterly check-ins, but we will be asking for you not to send your documents to the QI mailbox, but to instead upload them directly to GroupSite. And again, those quarterly check-ins for your LIA specific are January 15th, April 15th, July 15th, and October 15th. Those always stay the same on the quarter. We ask that you continue to participate in these community of learning virtual gatherings for sharing and learnings with other teams. If you are a 32P sub 4 with the LA option, we ask that you participate in the grantee meeting 32P sub 4 LIA specific breakout as well. So requirements for other quality efforts. For the learning collaboratives, these are all MDHHS teams and 32P sub 4 teams who have chosen the learning collaborative option from your menu. We want to give a big thank you to everyone who responded with your preferences at the grantee meeting. There were 2 that really rose to the top, the joy in work and the adverse childhood experiences. So look forward to more information coming on those. We ask that you participate in the key driver development and the measurement strategy development. So stay tuned for that. We appreciate the feedback from teams last year. And we really want you to participate in the development of this so that we can make changes prior to the January kickoff of the collaborative. We ask that you also continue to participate in community of learning virtual gatherings. And the kickoff for the learning collaborative will be at the January grantee meeting, which is virtual this year, yay. It is the same requirement as in previous years for Learning Collaborative. You're doing 2 PDSA cycles, the first between January and May, and the second between June and September. So you present your first cycle at the May grantee meeting and your second one at the September grantee meeting. You will continue to have that requirement of monthly data submission via REDCap, and then the team charter submission monthly will be via group site instead of the QI mailbox. Quality planning. So this is for, Rita had noted in the chat box earlier that quality planning is, the breakout is offered to MDE 32P sub 4 teams who choose this option from the menu. For teams who want to choose this option and have negotiated that with Rita, stay tuned for upcoming guidance. As last year, it sounds like we will be doing action planning with the teams. So you will have a contact here at MPHI that will assist you in guiding your quality planning work, participating in scheduled calls and or on-site meetings with Cynthia Zagar, and participating in the grantee meeting quality planning breakout and the Community of Learning virtual gathering. I think you're noticing a theme that everyone's invited to the Community of Learning virtual gathering. Additional reminders. So the 2020 MHVI grantee meetings have been set. The January 16th meeting is virtual. Registration and instructions for that will be coming soon. Then we have May 21st set aside and September 24th set aside, and we will communicate locations and logistics and such as those meetings get closer. We also have not scheduled, as you have noticed, there are no dates here, the Community of Learning virtual gatherings. And the reason for that, you saw via email from Raman, is that we would like to get your feedback via a poll today on which days work and which time of day works for your team. Because we have lots of teams joining this, and we've heard that the time that we've used has not always worked for everyone. So we wanted to open this up for a poll to make sure that we are being mindful of what is the best day and time for people. So we are going to launch a poll in a moment. And for those of you using the desktop version, it will have just popped up in front of you. So it's asking you to check the day of the week that is typically best for your team to attend the Community of Learning session, and then the time of day that is typically best for your team to attend. And if you don't have the desktop version and you're not seeing this pop up, if you could pop into the chat with a choice of day of the week that is typically best for your team, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, and you can list multiple days if you have multiple days that are good for your team. So those are Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then the second question is, what time of the day is typically best for your team to attend these sessions? So is it in the morning between 8 a.m. and 11 a.m.? Is it midday, 11 a.m. to 2, or is it afternoon, 2 to 5? Again, if you don't see the poll pop up, if you could just pop into the chat box with your team selections, and I'll give you just a moment or two. Okay, so it looks like the responses to the poll have slowed down, but you can keep your votes coming in or pop into the chat box with preferences. And the last announcement we have is the 2020 Michigan Home Visiting Conference dates have been set, and this year it's in July. So it's July 28th through 30th, and that is in Traverse City this time. So a little chance to go north a little bit. So put that on your calendars, and as that date comes closer, the conference committee will be sending out information on that. And I see Ashley is very excited to have the home visiting conference in her backyard. Oh, that's true. And the UP responded, it's south, depending on where you are. That is very true, Carrie. Thank you. So as we wrap up, are there any final questions for your QI coaches or about the upcoming schedule? Okay, well, we will leave the chat box going for a little while and the meeting open for a little while in case you need to consult a little bit and pop in with your responses to the date and time question for the Community of Learning gathering. Aside from that, thank you all so much for joining today, and to everyone who contributed with your experiences and your challenges. Your contributions are what makes these sessions so valuable to others and the learnings from others. And continue to give us your feedback on what you would like to see, what you want to hear about or learn more about as we move into FY20. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.